Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by East Coast Roofing, Siding, Windows, serving all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up online, eastcoastroofing.com. Andrew DiCecco is back. Last week, we took a little detour to the NFC South with that Baker Mayfield signing happening on that day or the day before. So we took a look at the South. Next week, we're going to travel up to the North today. Green Bay is your defending champion, 13-4. Minnesota 8-9. Chicago 6-11. Detroit 13-1. We'll see how Andrew thinks that division will end up. We'll take a look at all four teams, get a little overview. Our division previews continue right now with the NFC North. Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com is back. What's going on, Andrew? We missed you, bud.
Hey, man, how you doing?
All is good. We've got Green Bay, Minnesota. You know, Green Bay's the only team in that division last year that finished over, the 8-win mark. They were 13-4, but we know this is going to be a lot different team. So let's start with what they lost. Aaron Rodgers, his biggest weapon, Davante Adams, is gone. What does Rodgers have left to throw to? How will Davante Adams being gone, in your mind, change that offense?
It's going to change it drastically. I mean, anytime you lose one of the best receivers in the NFL, arguably the best receiver in the NFL, your offense is going to have a totally different look. And right now what they have is Sammy Watkins, you have Allen Lazard, who becomes the de facto number one, which is certainly not ideal. And then you have Randall Cobb, who's still there, veteran holdover. Christian Watson was someone who they drafted in the second round last season. He's being asked to really expedite his development as far as there's a lot of things he needs to really work on before he's really ready to be counted on as a viable asset to any offense. I think his route running is something that needs to be answered. There's a lot of questions surrounding that. So training camps will be very vital as far as his development. So, I mean, there's a lot of question marks there. And you look at the tight end position. Robert Tonyan is a player who has flashed on occasion. I don't know that he's a solid starter, but not a game breaker certainly, but he's a good red zone option. Mercedes Lewis is still there, a veteran second tight end. So there's a lot of question marks as far as the passing options. And the thing about Davante Adams was, yes, he's a dynamic talent, but he also opened things up for everyone else to be able to flourish. And now you have to wonder, where is that going to come from?
Yeah, obviously they got Lazard, and they drafted the kid Watson, as you mentioned. He's a North Dakota State kid, right? So a lot of unknowns at that spot, and you wonder, do you think this will affect Rodgers' output and affect Rodgers' game at all?
And inevitably it will. I mean, when he's a great quarterback and an all-timer. Don't get me wrong, but Davante Adams is a game-changing weapon. Like I said, he opens things up for everyone else. So you're seeing a lot of guys in single coverage and sometimes blown coverages, and you're able to compile stats that way. You're able to, move the ball effortlessly down the field. Now, I don't think that you're going to see. I mean, I'm almost positive you're not going to see these quick, 3, 4, 5 play drives. I think you're going to have to rely on Aaron Jones, and that's a question mark in itself because he also has had trouble staying on the field for a sustained period of time. And I think A.J. Dillon's going to be tapped for an elevated role this season. I'm interested to see what he can do with a little bit more volume. I think they're going to have to lean on him in the power running game element, especially as it gets colder. And I think he's proven last season that he's ready to shoulder a heavier role in the offense. So I think that's something that I would look at.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what kind of Rodgers can pull he can pull out of his hat with this offense here. You mentioned Jones and Dillon, part of the run game. You go to the defensive side of the ball for Green Bay. This is a defense that was better last year. Preston Smith, you got obviously Amos in the secondary, Savage in the secondary, some underrated guy. Rasul Douglas, a guy we're very familiar with here. He had a very good year in that system there. So where is this Green Bay defense in terms of the elite teams in the NFL?
Well, there are some question marks there on defense. I would say particularly on the front. I mean, I think Kenny Clark has been a stout player, their nose tackle in the middle of that line. First-round pick, I believe it was in 2016 or 2017. Productive player there for a while, but they do have some guys who are a little bit longer in the tooth, I would say, and you kind of know what they are at this point in their careers. They also added Quay Walker, the linebacker, in the second round. So I think that's a player you're going to look at as a difference maker at the second level. Also, Devondre Campbell, who comes over from, I believe it was Arizona. He's there as well. Rashawn Gary is a player that has been quite a bit of a polarizing prospect, a few years into the league. But I think he's shown glimpses of what he's able to do. So I'm interested to see if he takes that leap forward now after showing signs of optimism. And their secondary, I think very highly of it, actually. I've always liked Darnell Savage, particularly coming out of Maryland. I think he was my second-rated safety behind Juan Thornhill, if I'm not mistaken. Jair Alexander, to me, is probably a top 3 corner in the NFL, top 2, arguably. I think he does so many different things well. Play the nickel, can play the outside, tough, competitive, fluid corner, ball hawk, everything you look for. Rasul Douglas, yes, he had a big season last year, came through in the clutch for them in certain moments, but he's been a streaky player throughout his career. I don't know that you can necessarily count him to be able to man that outside spot for the entirety of the season without showing some of the blemishes that have really caused him to be a journeyman at this point in his career. So, and then you look at Eric Stokes, the corner from Georgia. He was the first-round pick, I believe, 2 years ago. So he's a player that has really held down that spot. And, of course, you look at Adrian Amos, the safety formerly of the Chicago Bears, who is really one of the more under-discussed players at his position. So I do like what they have there to work with as far as secondary.
Yeah, well done. A lot of intrigue with that Green Bay offense. You just heard, though, the defense might be able to help them. Minnesota, really intrigued by your thoughts on this team. Cousins, obviously, a polarizing guy. A lot of money, puts up numbers. People don't love him. Dalvin Cook, Madison's a really good backup there. Then you got Justin Jefferson and Thielen. You got 2 really good weapons there. Their problem has been the offensive line. So where do you see this Vikings offense, a team that finished 8-9 last year?
To your point about that, they have invested resources in solidifying. Get someone like a Christian Darrisaw drafted in the first round. Ezra Cleveland was in the second round. I think maybe 2020. He's their left guard. Garrett Bradbury was a first-round pick a few seasons ago, their center. So they have invested resources there. It's been a slow burn, but I think they've sort of turned the corner and have building blocks there in front of Kirk Cousins and are able to fully utilize the full gamut of offensive weapons that they have, led by none other than Justin Jefferson, who has become, and not just elite, I think he's one of the premier, you can argue, top 3 receivers in the NFL. Just what he's able to do from the outside and in the slot, and just the ability to take over a game. I think he's proven now, after seeing his body of work for a sustained period of time, what he's able to do, how he's able to win in a multitude of ways. And, of course, complemented by Adam Thielen. I think they both accent each other quite well as far as what they're able to do and what they bring to the table as far as skill sets are concerned. KJ Osborne is a pretty quick, shifty slot receiver, and he's more their speedy, get open over the middle, find the soft spot type of guy there. So they have a good trio of receivers for Kirk Cousins to work with. Looking at the running back position, you'd be hard-pressed to find someone with a better, pure running style, pure skill set than Dalvin Cook. I think he offers the power, yet the finesse to bounce it outside, and the vision, and his thing has always just been durability, right? So I think that Madison is the best running back, the best backup running back in the NFL, because I think he has proven in his opportunities that he could very capably be a starting running back on a number of teams. So to have that as a 1-2 duo, I think that you could certainly do a lot worse.
Yeah, no question about that. I love Madison too. I agree with you. He's the best backup guy in the league. Their defense, they were the strength of their team a couple of years ago, and that's saying a lot with the offense of weapons that they've had. Kendricks, Jordan Hicks is over there. Patrick Peterson getting a little long in the tooth. This is a team. Harrison Smith, Lewis Cine, I know is a guy that you liked at the draft. So where are they defensively now?
Well, I'm super high on their front. I guess their defensive line and their second level. Back end has some pieces that I like, but I think that as a whole, you look at Harrison Smith, how his lateral agility and his range certainly is not what it once was. Still, he's an above-average player at the position, but can certainly be taken advantage of if isolated. Lewis Cine is a player who I think can mask a lot of deficiencies on the back end. We talked about him throughout the draft. I think that he offers so many different things that he's able to do. A versatile skill set, a tone setter, great open field tackler, smart guy. I think he's going to be an instant contributor from day one. Chandon Sullivan is their nickel corner. Chandon Sullivan, of course, he got off to a rough start as an undrafted free agent with the Philadelphia Eagles, but the Eagles kind of cut ties with him prematurely, and he went on to find success with the Green Bay Packers and then cashed in as a free agent with the Vikings, and I think he's actually become one of the top nickel corners in football. Can also play on the outside, so they've solidified that area. And then they're looking at the left corner spot, Patrick Peterson. That is certainly a name that's been very relevant for the last decade plus. But you have to wonder at what point do things start to turn, and do teams start to look to exploit maybe his deteriorating skill set or what have you. But I think that as a whole, their defense is pretty solid, and they've added some young pieces there in key areas, especially on the back end. All
right, Chicago was 6-11 last year. The Bears obviously turning the page at quarterback. They're going to go to Justin Fields. So that's kind of zone in on what you think Fields will look like in year number 2.
Yeah, Fields is one of the players, along with Trey Lance, that I'm pretty high on going into this season. I think that you saw him work through some of the growing pains last year. There wasn't a whole ton of stability around him offensively. I think looking at what you have there with Matt Eberflus and Lou Getsy, the offensive coordinator, there's going to be a little bit more of a creative approach, so to speak, as far as the offense is concerned. I think it's going to cater more to his skill set. You look at the receiver position, Darnell Mooney is a player that I predicted to have a breakout season last year. He certainly did, and I think this year he even takes it to the next level, and you start to see everything materialize and come together. I thought he really came on late in the season, but I think now with improved quarterback play and better stability around him as far as coaching and game plans go, I think you're going to see him become more of a focal point. Brian Pringle was a player of the Chiefs. I think that he was a player that was being so stacked at the receiver position that he often got forgotten about, but a player that I think is going to be a really interesting player when we look at in terms of fantasy football as someone that can produce production. It's going to give you some production as far as there's going to be targets there. I think that he can affect all 3 levels of the field, and I think Darnell Mooney has proven that with his speed and big playability that he's going to draw a lot of attention and coverage to his side, which is going to open things up for Pringle. So I think that there's a decent 1-2 pairing there at receiver for Justin Fields to work with. And then you look at tight end. Cole Kmet was a player who was drafted in the second round in 2020 at Notre Dame. Again, he was a player that I thought was going to be a sleeper tight end prospect, someone that was really going to emerge last season. Didn't really happen, but again, I think that was part of a byproduct of the constant fluidity of that offense. And I think this season you're going to see him sort of settle in. And of course, the young quarterback, you're going to lean on your young tight end. And I think he's going to be a prominent factor at that in the red zone.
Well, they need a big year from Fields. It's been a quarterback revolution, revolving door, I guess I should say, over there. So they hope Fields is the right one. Defense is what the monsters of the Midway have been built on. Robert Quinn, Tonga. You've got some very interesting names over there. But I don't know, is this the same defense that we saw a couple of years ago that kind of led them to the playoffs?
Nah, it's not. And I think really what set the tone for that defense and made them one of the most prolific and formidable in the NFL at that time was their pass rush. They were feared. They were game changers, game wreckers, and quarterbacks had to account for them at all times. They never looked quite comfortable back there. But I think they have some young players that I like Travis Gibson, who was from Tulsa. He was a mid-round pick, shined at the Senior Bowl a couple of seasons ago. I like what he can do, but I don't know that he's a game wrecker, right? I think he's one of their edge rushers. Robert Quinn is there, who you mentioned. He's a veteran player that has a sustained history of being a productive player everywhere he's gone. Again, you know what he is more at this point in his career. I don't know that he's someone that's going to necessarily take over a game or inflict fear into an opposing quarterback. But then you look at the second level, and Roquan Smith is a player. You look at for a first-round pick, you hate to say any player is overlooked, but I think that he's about as overlooked as you can get for being a first-round talent. I think that he's been quietly very productive throughout his 4 or 5 seasons in the NFL, and is definitely has taken command of that second level and been a leader on that defense. And he really is the difference maker at that level. And then you look at the back end, you have Jalen Johnson, who is probably, in my opinion, one of the elite young corners in football. Very long, 6'2", I believe, or 6'1", formerly of Utah State. Utah, he's with the Utes. And second-round pick, and really come into his own, very physical and lengthy on the outside. Jaquan Brisker, the safety from Penn State, is a player who I've mentioned before that I was really high on, and I think he's going to settle in pretty seamlessly and complement what they have there in Jalen Johnson. Let's not forget Kyler Gordon, the corner who they took in the second round as well. So they have a lot of young pieces there to complement what they have on the as far as the defensive front.
A look at the Chicago Bears there. Let's go to Motor City, Motown, Detroit. Tough year, 3-13-1, but we heard a lot. Oh, they fought hard. They were in a lot of games, not a lot of wins. Jared Goff is back. This is a team. Jameson Williams, we'll see when he's available to play. St. Brown, DJ Chark they brought in, Hawkinson. So they got some pieces on this offense, and their offensive line's pretty good.
Yeah, you're right, and I think that's something that gets forgotten about when you look at the Lions. You think of a team that's always in a state of constant flux. Well, they have done over the past few years. They've really revamped that offensive line to make it, certainly serviceable. And I think it's it's very much ascending. There's a lot of young talent there, and receiver position, adding DJ Chark and Jameson Williams. Last season, they arguably have one of the worst receiving corps in football, but they fought for their head coach, and I thought that they outperformed what their talent level suggested, right? So Hawkinson is a tight end who I've always liked coming out of Iowa, but has struggled with injuries. But then again, I think he's someone that, looking at what they have, the offense is going to go through him. He's a veteran tight end at this point. He's going to be a reliable presence over the middle and in the red zone, and someone that I think is going to become more of a household name if his health allows him to be able to be available for the full slate of games. Running back position, DeAndre Swift, love what he brings from a skill set standpoint. Have a question about his durability and if he's really going to be able to be that three-down running back, because he's so exciting to watch. Dynamic player, explosive, everything that offense needs. That offense really needs explosive playmakers, which is what I think that Jameson Williams, the first-round pick from Alabama, the wide receiver, is going to really add to that offense as far as the passing game. But I think DeAndre Swift is going to have to continue to work in concert with Jamal Williams, is more of their battering ram type style of running back, and together they really make a pretty formidable backfield.
Right, and then on defense there, this is, they have some interesting names on that side of the ball, but they struggled a little bit. Obviously, it helps get you to 3 and 13. So what is kind of the identity and some of the guys on this defense here? Because I don't know that they really had that last year.
Well, they certainly have Aiden Hutchinson, who many said was the safest player in the first round. I think that he has a very, a safe ceiling. You know what you're going to get in him. Aleem McNeil is a player who was drafted in the third round. He's always going to be compared to Milton Williams. They went right around the same slot in the draft. He's been a productive player for them in the middle of their line, complemented by Michael Brockers, the veteran opposite him. He was formerly of the Rams, of course. I believe he was acquired actually in a trade. Charles Harris flanks them at the other. He's the bookend to Aiden Hutchinson at the end. Really good story of redemption. I thought that he really never really lived up to his billing, his high billing coming out of, I believe, Missouri when he was with the Dolphins. But I think he's starting to come into his own now, and sort of in the twilight of his career, so to speak. So I like what they have there. And then the linebacker position's a little bit of a weak spot, a sore spot for me, because I think while I like Alex Anzalone's tenacity and his sideline-to-sideline relentlessness and things like that, and his pursuit, he's not very fleet-footed, and I think he can be sort of taken advantage of. Teams are going to pepper his side of the field as far as the short area passing game. So I think that's an area to look at as far as exposure. And then the third level, you have Jeff Okota, formerly of Ohio State, corner on the outside there. Yeah, opposite Amani Oruwariye, the very physical 6'2" corner from Penn State, very raw when he came out. I thought that he's really starting to refine some of his skill sets. A little too grabby for my liking, but I think they have a pretty decent pairing of corners there. And Tracy Walker and Deshaun Elliott as the safety position. I think Deshaun Elliott, to me, is coming over from Baltimore. Is a very unheralded player that can do a number of different things and give them some flexibility on the back end there. And so, I mean, they're going to give up some points, Mike, but they're on the way to rebuilding that defense the way that I think that they envisioned.
Yeah, I know that was a team last year, as we kind of talked about. They fought hard. We'll see if that leads to more wins this year. So we'll ask Andrew. Green Bay, Minnesota, Chicago, Detroit. That's how they finished in 2021. How do you see them in 2022?
I like Minnesota, Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit.
Wow, so the Adams loss is big enough for Minnesota to take over that division. You're on the Vikings wagon this year.
Yeah, I really like what the Vikings have done from a defensive standpoint and from on the offensive line standpoint to rebuild that. Now it just depends on Kirk Cousins. Is he going to continue to be the streaky guy that he is, or is he going to be someone that now that he has there's no excuses. So now that the surrounding talent is there, the division seems to be for the taking. I don't know. I think the loss of Devontae Adams for Green Bay is going to be too much to overcome, which is why I have them finishing second in the division.
Great stuff, as always, here on our division previews. That's a look at the North with Andrew DiCecco. Next week, we'll look at the NFC East, and then we'll be in Eagles training camp, and we'll have all training camp coverage on Football at 4 right here on the Sports Bash. All right, Andrew, appreciate it, bud.
Yeah, man, no problem.
That was excellent. We had some good text messages that came in talking about how well versed and deep of the knowledge Andrew has of some of these teams and rosters. He does an excellent job. InsideTheBirds.com and, of course, the Inside the Birds podcast.